Hello and welcome everyone to our channel. Today we have a very special guest on our podcast, Akash Joshi. He is a very good friend of mine, and in this podcast we talk about some things, many projects which he has done, including the following. So sit back and enjoy.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I am your host Rohan, and today we have a very special guest on our first ever podcast. Please welcome Mr. Akash Amit Joshi, a very good friend of mine, and we are currently in our final year of our computer engineering degree. And over the past 3 to 4 years, Akash has worked with some very good programming projects and very cool technology such as Linux server management, Python and C++, and web dev and machine learning. So without further ado, let's welcome Akash.
Thank you, thank you.
So first question, why are you so toxic when you play Valorant? So for context guys, we play Valorant every day and it becomes very control freak when we play. So yeah, moving on. Next question. I don't
Okay,
get to answer.
sure.
Yes. So okay, a serious question. When did you first start programming? And what made you in love with it? And what inspired you to pursue the field the way that you have?
Okay, so basically, when I was young, used to watch some movies, English movies, because the Hindi channels were locked by my mom. So
Okay.
I had no choice but to watch English movies.
Yes.
So there was this Marvel movie of Iron Man, and it got me so intrigued by the fact that he built his own AI, built his own machine which he powers with an arc reactor, and that just made me quite intrigued in to the programming.
That's relatable because it's the same reason why I also got interested in engineering. I remember when I was in 9th or 10th standard, I first watched the movie Iron Man, and the way he developed his suits and actually I got interested in electronics and material science. But the fact that he made his own AI as well, that inspired me to uh, go into programming. So yeah, good to know that we have that in common.
Yeah.
Um, you told me that Minecraft inspired you to make your own games. Playing a lot of games got you thinking about building your own games. Tell me more about it.
So, like in 9th, 10th standard, me and my school friends, we made an Atorno server and we started playing on that server. So I was like, okay, how can we build games? I was anyways fascinated with Jarvis, the AI which Iron Man created in the movie. So that got me into games, into development, like into thinking curiously about all these things. So when me and my friends started playing Minecraft and all of that, it became a slow process of me being curious more and more and more, and that led to me getting a book of Python.
So you said that you bought a Python book,
Yeah.
but you didn't learn much from it. You didn't learn from our college engineering classes as well.
Yeah.
You said you learned properly only from YouTube since 2022. Why is that?
Well, I got the book in lockdown. I think it might be because the language in which the concepts were written in were too complex for me, because I did not understand English well that much to understand the exact concepts in. So I would have preferred if someone would have explained it to me in maybe Hindi or Marathi, but English right now it's fine. Next, for engineering courses, it sometimes I was not paying attention. Other times the concept was too simple to understand, and the lectures are just beating around the bush and all of that. Because of that, I did not understand much in the lectures. YouTube, well, I was curious anyways. I wanted to build some projects. I wanted to learn more about the technologies. So I just went on YouTube, searched the concepts. Okay, object-oriented programming in 1 hour. So then there was a free code camp video which I watched for. There were many videos similar to that. And then there is a 1 hour video. There are 12-hour videos as well. I watched, I think, the 1 hour video and I understood it relatively better compared to when I read the book.
So for you, the most practical approach was watching videos and then building from.
Yes, yes.
So you mentioned that you have used roadmap.sh since its inception, even when it wasn't famous.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about it.
So roadmap.sh, I don't recall exactly when I started using it. So as I was trying to understand more about a particular concept, okay, I in Python I learned the basic data structures. Then I started with the object-oriented programming. Then I was like, okay, is this it? But there are more things apart from this. There are iterators. Then there are many concepts, advanced concepts, which they don't teach it in our lectures or in the books. So I was like, I need a roadmap. So I just went on YouTube and Google that where can I find good roadmaps. And there was a video about roadmap.sh. When I started using that website, it just had a few roadmaps. Like there will be a C++ roadmap, there is a Python roadmap, and then there was a front end roadmap. Currently, they have quite a lot of roadmaps. Like users can add their own roadmaps for particular niche fields which they have interest in. Then you can find from n number of roadmaps right now, and there are many of them which are AI generated as well.
Okay, so do the users submit those roadmaps, or is there a review committee? Which,
I have not explored that yet, but when I was just watching it, so let's say for a Python roadmap, or even better, a computer science roadmap.
Okay.
First is select a language. So there are multiple languages sections given there, and when you click on that, there is a respective video or an article for that particular concept. So let's say I want to learn sorting algorithms. Then there is bubble sort, insertion sort, quick sort. All of those algorithms are there in a flowchart. And once I click on it, there are multiple videos, articles through which you can just understand them. So there are some few minutes videos, there are an hour-long video, etc. And there are articles as well. I have not seen any research papers about it, maybe because the concepts don't have much research papers or much research done in it. So, and also, since it's a roadmap, you can just cross it out once you are done with it.
Okay.
And
So
it
like a
saves your
to-do
history.
list.
Yeah, it saves the history as well. So once I create my account and I bookmark this roadmap, I can just check it out once I'm done with it. Currently, I'm doing that only.
Personally, I have never used roadmaps, but since you mentioned, I think it's quite powerful for the learners.
Yeah, you can. There are many roadmaps for machine learning, DevOps, then front end, back end. You name it, there might be a roadmap for it.
Okay, nice. So you started online classes for object-oriented programming for Python and C++.
Yeah.
Which classes would you recommend are the best for learning about coding?
I did not classes. I did not.
Udemy classes or
For Udemy, I refer to a Udemy course for web development, not for some programming related. I understood the concepts of object-oriented programming through videos only. I referred the course of web development bootcamp, full, complete, comprehensive web development bootcamp by Angela Yu. Like it had front end, back end, version control, and she also added the newer concepts like Web3, blockchain into it.
Web3. Have you ever explored that?
Well, it was in coursework, so I understood a bit of it, but I
Do you
haven't
think
not.
it's important? Because personally, I think it's overhyped.
Like the cryptocurrency part of it, I think it is overhyped. Maybe it can crash, but you don't know because everyone is very hyped about it, so maybe it can increase. It's quite volatile.
Okay, it's a new concept, right? So you mentioned that 90% of your earlier projects were in Python.
Yes.
What things can you tell us about Python which you personally like more than other languages? Personally, I prefer Python more than any other language.
Yes.
But
Well, Python is definitely one of the easiest language to learn because there are simple inbuilt functions which you can use which C++ or lower level languages don't have them. But once as a computer engineering student, I should understand the fact that although I am able to use the inbuilt functions, I should understand how those functions are. Like what exactly works in those functions. So I think the understanding of a low level language is must. Like C and C++, like one should definitely learn the concepts from it.
Python, I think, is much more closer to English language because it provides a lot of abstractions, and I think that's why I like it more than other low-level languages. But what things about Python do you like?
I think the extensive libraries and all of that. Like there are multiple libraries. You don't need to build entire functions on your own.
True, true. So, one of your earlier projects was a weather API project,
Yeah.
where you initially used Open Weather Map.
Yeah.
You said you had many issues with the API call, so then you used GeoPy for it.
Yeah.
Describe in short the project for us.
So it was a very simple project. What I did was got the API key. It was a link. So in that link you have to add the longitude and latitude. When I was in the previous documentation, previous versions of it, they just had the location. There was no longitude and latitude required for the API to work. But when I was doing the project, it required the longitude and latitude. So they had updated that API. So how will I find the longitude and latitude of a particular place? I found a different Python library called as GeoPy, and there was a function in it which once called when I give an input of a location, let's say Pune, then it will give me the latitude and longitude of the area around it. Maybe it will give Sakarnagar or Swargate, something like that. And based on that, then I stored it in a variable and then I formatted into the API link. Once that is done, I just called it.
So this is a project which is most beginner friendly.
Yes, very
Would you
beginner.
recommend that?
Yeah, I think if you want to understand what APIs are and how APIs work, along with how you can build it on your own, then I think it's recommended. If you are able to add a UI to it, that is well and good. Maybe you can use Flask or Django.
Okay. So some other projects which you have worked are Sudoku solver.
Yeah.
Then there are the current projects like BE project which you are doing Zercraft, and other projects like renewable energy forecast and time series analysis.
Yes.
So describe these projects in short and what did you learn the most?
Okay, so for the Sudoku project, it was a simple project like the Sudoku solver. I was able to understand how backtracking works with that project. And it's a very simple project if you know some basic concepts of programming and the language which you are proficient in.
Which language did you use for this?
I use Python as well.
Python.
Like you can do the same in C++, the logic is the same, function calling and all of that. But apart from that, I don't think it will make, of course, the complexity is a big thing. But
Was that project something related to DSA, standard DSA project?
yeah, like there was another project which I was trying to do, an algorithm visualizer. So basically, when I search for bubble sort, it should be giving big O of n square complexity, but that should be visualized. How I should be doing it, I abandoned it after a certain point.
Okay.
But that is maybe DSA projects one should be doing so that they'll understand the exact data structures and the algorithms properly.
Okay, so personally, I have never delved deep much into DSA because I think it's a very traditional programming, and nowadays with chatbots you can just quickly generate the code. I do a different kind of coding where for my ML projects you have other things like how you handle data and how you load that into a data loader and how you write the functions for the training and optimization and so on. These are different projects from the standard DSA.
Yes.
What do you think students should do? Should they focus on DSA or other kinds of projects?
I think this question becomes a subjective question because if I am interested into core software development, then I should be doing DSA. And if I want to do into machine learning and go into that, then I should explore that field more. Personally, I believe you should be doing both of them. Why? Because when I try to apply for any company or so, the first thing comes is a question DSA. So I should be knowing DSA. So maybe you can do some DSA using some websites. There is LeetCode, there is Geek4Geeks, there is Codeforce, etc.
Very competitive.
Yeah, but like if you are able to, like I said in the roadmap.ss, there are all the concepts are there. There is a data structures and algorithm roadmap as well. Let's say if I follow all of this and I understand the concept, and if I am able to implement it, then all I have to do is just revise some of the company questions which they frequently ask.
Yeah, true. So after some months, you got interested in web dev.
Yeah.
You did Udemy courses for front-end HTML, SCSS, and JavaScript.
Yeah.
You participated in hackathons like Hacktoberfest.
Yeah.
Initially, you got only one pull request accepted, if I understand that correctly.
Yes.
And then the next year, 4 of your 5 pull requests got accepted.
Yes.
And that you were very proud of. So describe your journey for us.
Okay, so I switched to web development because I thought I was confident in Python. I thought everything is done, but that was not the case, which I realized later. And then in the departmental committee, I was a part of the web team. So I anyways had to start learning about web development. I had some interest in it as well. Although it was minimal interest, but yes, I had it. So,
What aspect about web dev did you like the most?
I think the creative aspect, like, okay, I am able to, okay, I want to sell a product, and there is a website out of it, and it's made up of animation. There are many animations, like the visualization is very good, the colors are good, so that will make a website more attractive for me, and that and the thought process of the designer and the developer, that's what makes the web development creative.
Do you think there is more scope for web dev in the future? Because currently there are some AI tools that automate that process, but still they
I
cannot
have used it. I have used it.
but
on
they
my
don't
own.
make website very
Definitely.
good. So
I think with with ChatGPT, DeepSeek, etc. I think the web development process, like the front end development, I won't say the back end. The front end development will be very easy because there will be some problems which in the back end which occurs many times. I personally have faced them in my BE project, which ChatGPT can't solve. You have to manually go see every single line of code and see where that problem is arising from.
okay.
Yeah.
So then you slowly transitioned to ML after web dev.
Yes.
And the first thing you did is you made a movie recommender system
Yes.
as your first project.
Yes.
You did this in Flask, so you could add front end to it yourself.
Yeah.
And for this you used Kaggle dataset.
Yeah.
You referred a YT video for this, but all the things which you did were on your own for Flask.
Yeah.
And copy pasting the original code gave you many errors. Some errors in dataset handling, so you made Flask functionality on your own.
Yeah.
And you understood the logic behind all the tokenizers and the NLTK library which you used.
Yes.
And the final website, everything that you did it yourself.
Yeah.
You said that you had to render the website not in default HTML CSS, but you had to wrap it around the Python logic.
Yeah.
So tell us the whole project in your own words.
Okay, so as it was my first project and me having no idea of how machine learning works and all of that, I just watched some videos to understand the basic concepts and all of that, and then I was like, okay, let me do a project to understand this more. So I found a video, movie recommender system. That was some guy video. It was an hour or 2 hour video. I referred to it. And that guy, the logic behind the machine learning model, I understood it and then I did it on my own. Like the tokenization, so then the lemmatization, all these processes. So, and the movie and the dataset I got was the TMDB5000. It has been updated right now, but I used the older version because the guy on the YouTube video referred to that one only. So basically, that dataset had, let's say, a movie. What excites a person about a movie? Its genre, its plot, the director, the actors. So these 4 things are the primary things which a person gets excited about. So the recommender model should be based on these things only. So I understood why it should be done. Then all of this, it became an n by n graph. And after that graph was based on the Euclidean distance instead of the normal Manhattan distance or in general normal distance formula. So after that, I converted that into 0 to 1 ratio instead of the exact actual distance. And 1 being the closest or the same, and the 0 being there is no you can't recommend this movie to someone who likes an X movie. So after that, I did that. I generated a pickle file which stored all the data, the matrix and n by n matrix in the pickle file, and then I loaded it into the app.py which ran my Flask. The guy on the video used some different. I think that person used Streamlit to host it on Heroku. But I was facing some problems running Streamlit on my device, so the only option I had was to run Flask because the documentation was very easy to understand. So and then I searched, okay, how should I create a front end for Flask server? So I made a front end using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So there is a thing known as rendering in Flask. So when I call the rendering function, it maps where our index.html file is in our directory. Then that file gets rendered. But in order to add Python functionality, I have to add a specific syntax. So there are particular syntax for using loops and conditions. So once I used that, the website was properly built.
Okay.
As you can see, we have teleported.
Okay, so you now mentioned that you had issues uploading your code files on GitHub.
Yeah.
So you did something on your own. You added a zip file
Yeah.
for bypassing the GitHub upload limit. Tell us about it.
So basically, GitHub has an upload limit of 25 MB. So what the issue was that when I generated the pickle file of my movie recommender system, that file was not getting uploaded. So I zipped it and I added a functionality in the app.py file, the Flask app, so that it will just unzip and it will be able to read the zipped file. So with that, the size of the pickle file got reduced, the zip file was reduced, and because of that, I was able to upload it on GitHub.
Okay, nice. So now let's move on to the real fun stuff. Both of us have worked with Proxmox.
Yeah.
So for the viewers, Proxmox is a type 1 hypervisor, which in simple words means that you can just host virtualization, virtual machines and containers on bare metal.
Yeah.
So
You are also able to isolate your RAM cores.
yes,
And
so instead of
storage.
using VMware or VirtualBox, which is like an extra layer of abstraction, you just host it on bare metal. And let's talk about what you did first, how you got interested in it, and how you began the Proxmox project.
So I was anyways interested. Well, I was exploring quite a lot of things during like last year, and there was also a session on DevOps in our college. So I attended it, and during that session, a friend of mine told me about this Proxmox setup and what he was doing. So I was saying, you know what? Let me also try it. I have an old laptop whose display does not work, so why not? So I got it. I got the laptop, and I tried to tinker around and install Proxmox. There was some errors initially, but then I realized the error was that my RAM limitation.
Yes.
So luckily it was DDR4, so I was able to add 16 GB RAM in my laptop. So after that, all things were smooth. Well, I referred a network video of installing Proxmox and creating a virtual machine and a container. So with that, I understood the basic fundamentals. And I have installed Proxmox so many times. I have it by heart at this point. There were so many errors in the Proxmox.
So you did work on setting up Cloudflare tunnels,
Yeah.
Tailscale, Docker,
Yeah.
and Nextcloud. Tell us about that.
So the first reason I set up Cloudflare was that I wanted to access my server remotely. I watched another video of Network Chuck, where he set up a Cloudflare tunnel, and with that he had a domain. Along with that, he was able to he was able to access his server from anywhere. But then I realized that was a mistake of my own, where I should not have done that. Then I set up a VPN known as Tailscale.
Because you should keep it private.
Yes, because I should keep it private because it's my server, and if anyone who can access it can access my network, and that raises privacy concerns. So I installed Tailscale, and with that I am able to access my server remotely from anywhere. The fun part about Tailscale is that it's a VPN hosted on your own server. That's the fun part.
Did you know that when I was in the process of setting up of automation,
Yeah.
I had installed Tailscale on it,
Yeah.
and I set it as an exit node. So
Yeah, you don't do that.
for 10 minutes, my server was in the black hole.
Yeah.
And very luckily, once I rebooted
Yeah.
it worked out.
Yeah, even I did that. You should not be doing it because it sends traffic through that. That should not be done.
So believe it or not, I started my home server journey on a very very old Sony Vaio laptop. It had only 3 GB RAM and 1 terabyte SSD. And it used to shut down automatically after 5 to 6 hours of work.
Yeah, no, you
And,
told me.
but within that tiny window, I used to do a lot of fun experimentation. Like I explored many Linux instances like Kali Linux for networking and hacking,
Right.
or Arch Linux because there's a meme in the Linux community that I also use Arch Linux.
Yeah.
The whole manual installation process.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yes. So looking back, all the things which I did initially were less of a dedicated goal type project. and more like playing around and having fun while still learning a lot.
Yeah.
I also feel that the home server projects have a tinkering aspect that other projects like programming do not have.
Definitely.
What do you think about it?
I think, like, have you ever built a PC?
Exactly. No, I haven't, but I know the process.
Yeah, I have not built my own PC. I want to, but I could not. I was young, so it's like the same excitement which you have when you are able to build something on your own, and it works. It works as intended. You are able to get the output which you expected, and it just gives you so much happiness. It's like finally, after hours and hours of doing research, tinkering around, finding solutions, watching that one video, one YouTube video having 10 views for a specific problem, and that problem gets solved by just rebooting it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Programming, I think, involves some copy pasting, but the hardware aspect of the
Definitely.
home server project, that's something that cannot be replicated. So, I had fun in buying a static IP for my home ISP service.
Yeah.
And luckily, he gave me a discount of 5,000 rupees for 6 months. And I proceeded to set up custom domains for some services on my server.
Yeah.
And one of the services which I have hosted is called Coolify. It's a platform which has a built-in reverse proxy, and it helps us route external users to our own home network.
Right.
It works differently from Cloudflare Tunnel
Yeah.
because it's a reverse proxy.
Yeah.
Which one would you prefer more and why?
I think if you have a static IP, then a reverse proxy is a must, so that you are able to access your network from anywhere, since you are anyways connected to it. I personally don't have a static IP. Well, because for me it's not necessary as of now. I do not host any services. All the services which I'm hosting are for my own and for my family.
Okay.
So, but there is one thing. Static IP does not have a limitation of network speed.
Okay.
So that is one good thing about static IP. Cloudflare has a network limitation. So maybe if you are doing some critical tasks, which you have services which are critical, then a static IP is a must with having a reverse proxy.
The Cloudflare tunnel thing which you mentioned,
Yeah.
does that have a cap limit of the data that you're uploading, or the bandwidth of the network speed?
I think it is 10 Mbps is the max speed in which the data transfer speed. It's the data transfer speed of that.
Oh. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we have teleported once again, as you can see. So moving on. For my current server, the HP PC, it's an HP 800G1. When I started out, it used to crash a lot unexpectedly, even if I was doing everything correctly. I thought that I was maybe missing some setting in Proxmox like hibernation or sleep or some other software setting, or maybe the issue was networking, or maybe the VMs were causing overload on the server. However, after many months spent in frustration, I finally found the main cause, and it was because of a faulty RAM stick. Once I replaced it, everything went back to normal. So the main issue was hardware. Did you face similar hardware issues on your own side?
Yeah, like when I installed Proxmox for the first time, my old laptop had 4 GB RAM, but I thought it will work, but my VMs were getting overloaded, and the laptop was sleeping, hibernating as well. So I just changed the sleep configuration file of the sleep setting, and I stopped it from ever sleeping or hibernating, and it just powers off once battery is dead, and it wakes on power on as well.
Okay.
And after I upgraded the RAM to 16 GB, now it works perfectly now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said that you had a hard disk connected via USB to your laptop server.
Yeah, don't do
which
that.
had issues. So you proceeded to manually break 3 hard drives.
Yeah.
So you could add SATA yourself.
Yeah.
Describe your thought process behind such reckless behavior.
Okay, firstly, you should not be connecting USB. Well, I did it because I wanted the Nextcloud setup properly. I was able to make, I used my 1.5 terabyte hard disk connected via USB, but then the data transfer speed was very low because it's a USB. Next, there is a term known as, it's not called as breaking the hard disk. It's known as shulking, okay? Remember that.
Okay.
So shulking is basically you break the case, and it is just the SATA port is just there, and you connect it via SATA cables. Like SATA power splitter and the SATA data cable. That directly gets connected through the motherboard and the power supply, which makes the speed fast, data transfer speed fast.
You then hunted for a new PC which
Yeah.
had legacy BIOS issues. You had to refer to, you mentioned this, you had to refer to videos which no one has ever seen. And tell us a bit more about it.
Okay, so well, I had an old server PC. Like my uncle had an old server PC. It was a 10-year-old PC, HP Proliant. That the PC's name is. It had Gen 1 Intel Xeon processor.
Okay, not bad.
Yeah,
Gen 1?
Gen 1.
No, I'm not sure about
No, like there are 4 or 5 generations only, and Gen 1 is very old, like 10 or 15 years old. So so that was one of the biggest mistake. Like I referred to quite a lot of videos though, and the first problem was that Proxmox was not running properly.
Okay, why is that?
I think there was some BIOS issue only. Like the legacy BIOS cannot have maybe some virtualization property. Although Xeon processor was having virtualization, but the BIOS was having issues only. I was unable to work properly up with it.
Okay.
Then, so instead of that, I used it, and also I shulked my hard disk for building a NAS, which is a network attached storage, and since I just had that old PC, I wanted to make it a NAS server on its own. So instead of adding a Proxmox on bare metal and then virtualizing TrueNAS on it, I just installed TrueNAS Scale on the bare metal.
Tell us what you did with TrueNAS.
Okay, so TrueNAS is an open source tool which I used so that I am able to create data sets. It is known as data sets in TrueNAS. I created a data pool, which people generally call it as tank, and so that it will connect all the hard disks. It will act as a single hard disk only, or a single storage device.
So the main purpose you explored TrueNAS was because you wanted to pool together multiple hard drives.
Yes.
Did you want a lot of storage with it, or was there something you wanted to experiment?
Well, I used all the old PCs and laptops which I had. All the storage I shulked many of them. I just removed the hard disks of old laptops and connected via SATA. As it was a server PC, not just a normal PC. It was a tower one, and it had RAID 2 configuration before I changed it to normal, and I changed the configuration to RAID Z1 from TrueNAS while creating the pool.
Okay.
So I used all the hard disks which I had. I got a SATA cable and a power splitter to add more of the storage devices through the motherboard, right? So with that, I was able, like, once I added all the storage devices, I wanted to create once I thought I created a NAS, it did not work properly. But I wanted to a Jellyfin server, then a Nextcloud server, then I wanted to read mangas, then I wanted to store my photos as a drive as well.
Okay.
So, well, the biggest issue I had while creating the NAS was that the legacy BIOS issues. Like, I was not able to use it properly, and it was so frustrating at times that I wanted to just rip it all apart and start from scratch. And I did it many times as well. Right now, it did not work properly, so I just have stopped that server, and I am in hunt for a new PC with with UEFI BIOS, not legacy.
Okay. Personally, when I want to store something, I want it on a fast basis. I want to access it. So I just use a Nextcloud instance on one Ubuntu VM. That solves all my storage problems.
Right.
So I do not prefer NAS for that. So would you prefer Nextcloud or would you prefer NAS for yourself?
Well, in Nextcloud, you are also able to add a NAS on your own. Like, there is an administrative setting where you can add external storage to it. So what I did is that I have my old laptop, and what I had planned was that I will run the Nextcloud on my container. I did not use a VM, I used a container, and it runs properly. And on the Nextcloud instance, I will connect an external storage. That is my NAS. So I do not need to create use the storage devices, add those storage devices in a VM or a container, and then I am able to use it easily. Like this is a very different approach compared to what you are doing.
Okay,
But
okay,
I
got
think that one will be better for me because I only have 16 gigs of RAM in my old laptop, and for server I am hoping I'd get at least 16 or 32.
Okay, okay. So everything that I have done till now. Okay, so beforehand I used to host many containers for individual lightweight processes.
Yeah.
But now I have done everything on one Ubuntu EM, and under that VM I host all my containers. But I feel that you use multiple containers. So would you prefer just one VM and then on top of that everything else, or multiple separate
Like
instances?
I think it depends upon what service you are trying to host. If you are hosting multiple services for multiple users and all of that, I think a VM will be better. Like you are just creating a like it's proper, and you are able to change it easily. You are able to access, you can give access to others. Although container is also able to do the same, but I think for certain things, like let's say Tailscale, I will always have Tailscale in a separate container. I will always have Cloudflare on a separate container only. I won't have it on the same container as my VM. So, and if I have, let's say I have multiple websites, if I want to run using Docker and Nginx, so I will maybe use Portainer along with in a Docker VM. So that will be way better compared to, let's say I am hosting other services for me.
Okay, okay. So most of the things which you have done on Proxmox, you have done for your own use.
Yeah.
And the service which I currently have under my startup, I am offering it for external customers as well, using Cloudflare tunnels.
Right.
So do you think that other people like us can similarly build a server and they can host these kinds of services for customers, or do you think that Proxmox should be an individual thing for your own personal benefit?
I think if you want, you can just make services for others.
Do you think it has scope for production level?
Yeah, I think there might be some like, of course, if you have the necessary hardware for it, you can make it as in a production software, production. Like people anyways use Ubuntu servers. So let's say if I am a hosting company where I am trying to give out services, so that I'm giving out instances for you to use, then I can just create. Okay, a customer calls me. They are saying I want a Kali Linux instance, 8 GB RAM, 128 GB space.
Yes.
I can just give it.
Okay, you can just spin it up for
Yeah, I can just make it on my hardware. I can make it on using Proxmox, and I can just give it. I don't need to isolate the entire device, the hardware, physical hardware, on its own. I can just use an instance in Proxmox.
In the near future, if you buy a new PC, let's say, would we be seeing such stuff from your side, any production level things?
Right now, yeah, maybe I think in the future. Right, currently I'm setting up Nextcloud for my cousins and all of that. Like they also are in dire need of storage. My hard disks are coming. Once I am able to set up my NAS and put it in the Nextcloud instance, then it will be perfectly fine.
Okay.
In the future, I am planning, once if I get some ideas, like some business ideas, if I am able to solve some problem, I will self-host it. I am anyway self-hosting my own projects. So like my portfolio website is self-hosted. It's on a container. Then I'm also making inventory management app for my own.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
really
so
great.
and I am trying to self-host it as well. Like how will it work?
You have self-hosted a search engine called CRNS,
Yes,
right?
yes. So when I installed Tailscale, I subscribed to their channel, and like 2-3 months ago they uploaded a new video. So why use Google search when you can use your own?
Yes.
So it was a Tailscale video. So there is a search engine known as CRXNG. So you can just use it. So instead of searching it on Google, you're using CRXNG, and that will give you a summarized info of every search which you can get using many search engines, like there is Yahoo, there is Google, there is Bing, etc. Firefox,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So, for some weeks instead of Proxmox, I installed Ubuntu version directly on my main server.
Yeah.
But this approach is not recommended because if the system crashes, everything crashes.
Right.
Whereas only an Ubuntu VM crashes, we can easily and quickly replace it and install a fresh version. What do you think about this?
Like if you are using for your personal uses, I think it does not matter much if your instance crashes. You can just fix it up later on when you are free. But if it's in if you have money involved, it's business. If it's affecting business, then I think it is way better to have a Proxmox having a VM instance, so that if by chance, because some power failure, because some data corruption, where VM fails, you can just create a new one.
Okay, so I think that's it. And thank you very much for joining
Yeah,
our
thank you.
podcast.
It was fun for
Yes,
me
yes,
as
it
well.
was very fun. Yes, so
Yeah, the teleportation was definitely fun.
exactly. So bye, guys.
Bye bye.
Kapre. Passing the GitHub upload limit. Tell us about it.
As we can see, we have a guest.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
माझं हसणं पण
तुला काय ऍक्सेंट करायला लागलं पण
नाही 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 तो आहे ना ऑलरेडी रेकॉर्ड नंतर काय आहे ना?
इमिडिएटली
मी विचारलं ना
टॉयलेटला चाललाय.
बरं तू परत कर थांब.
तो असा येत होता, मी त्याकडे बघत होतो. येतो.
तो नाही ती येते आय गेस
कुत्रा आहे त्याला लावून ना.
बघू तुझा
ॲडव्हर्टाइजमेंट रेकॉर्ड आहे. रेकॉर्ड होता
रेकॉर्ड होत आहे रेकॉर्ड होत आहे सॉरी ए स्टार्ट स्टार्ट
आता वेळ थांबतो
बाबा जा
विचित्र प्राणी
हे कुत्र्यांना असं नाही करायचं बाय
चालेल.
चालूच आहे.
So GitHub has a upload limit of 25 megabits per fuck. 25 megabits per second. Network.